So I, and seemingly everybody else in the world of anime, have recently watched season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. I have a whole lot to say about this show. How everybody in it is written like a main character, how absolutely amazing the animation looks starting from episode 1, how I genuinely believe that Jujutsu Kaisen might just become the next long-term big shonen, and how I cannot stop thinking about this really cool and unique outro. But the one aspect of Jujutsu Kaisen that comes to mind front and center whenever I think about this show is one very specific character. And if you've seen the show or read the title of this video, you've presumably already guessed who I'm talking about. Satoru Gojo, the playful and relaxed teacher to a main cast of characters, who shows them the world of Sorcerer and is, completely casually, the absolutely strongest guy in existence. Gojo shows up in the second episode, beats up the main bad guy in an impressive display of power, and then continues to just vibe through the rest of the show by casually defeating and dispatching literally every villain thrown his way without breaking a sweat. He keeps reiterating that he is the strongest guy and that nobody could ever best him, and I can absolutely not stop thinking about this dude. Now this is a little weird, right? Calling a character overpowered has long been an insult in the anime community, a hindrance to the construction of a meaningful plot, and you would expect a character as blatantly overpowered as Satoru Gojo to kinda suck the excitement out of a story. A character with plot armor so obvious that he himself knows it should make this a profoundly uninteresting experience. Why should I care about this show? Why should I watch it when I know that the very strongest guy is already an ally of our hero? I have a really hard time getting into Boruto because his dad is already the strongest fucking dude there is. I've seen Boruto's dad kill a god. What the heck is gonna happen to Boruto? And if that's the case, why the hell do I keep watching Jujutsu Kaisen like it's some sort of crack cocaine anime? The more I thought about Satoru Gojo and why he keeps me coming back to this show, the more I came to the conclusion that it is actually really interesting to introduce such a violently overpowered character, in particular in the form of a teacher or a mentor or a sensei very early on in the story. Before I get to make that argument though, I need to issue an important disclaimer. I have not yet read the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, and I am using examples from and basing my argument on strictly season 1 of the anime. Also, if you want to know if you should watch Jujutsu Kaisen, you should check out my video titled "Should You Watch Jujutsu Kaisen?" You'll find the link right here, bing, or in the description for this video. With that said, I think there are 3 main reasons speaking for the early introduction of an OP character, the first one being their function as a goal. Adding a strong character like Gojo to your anime's early arcs allows exactly this character's strength to serve as a tangible goal for the protagonists and their friends to strive for. By making it abundantly clear that Satoru Gojo is leagues beyond Itadori, Fushiguro, and Kugisaki, the show also clearly and transparently teaches the characters as well as the viewers that there is a peak, that there is something to strive for. Sure, our heroes might be strong for regular human standards, but in terms of sorcery fights, they are still far beneath any serious threats. This is an effective storytelling device on 2 levels. First, the existence of Gojo and his infinite power serves as a motivator for the protagonists. If they want to save the world, fight the really big bads of the Jujutsu Kaisen universe, they are going to have to become at least as strong as their teacher. While this seems all but impossible at the start of the story, the characters are from the very point of meeting Gojo put on a path to surpass him. Secondly, this lets us, the viewers, gain some much needed context. We can understand that the main characters are at the very beginning of their development, and we can expect and look forward to some really tough and exciting fights and power-ups as a result of this knowledge. Another great example for using an overpowered character in this manner is My Hero Academia's All Might. Introduced at the very beginning of the series, he is quickly established as the undefeatable paragon of justice and power in this world. And while he is not quite as overtly unbeatable as Satoru Gojo, it is still made clear that the difference in power between him and everybody else is pretty much insurmountable, even for the strongest guy around. Again, this shows the viewer just how much the protagonists still have to achieve, while also showing the protagonists themselves a real, if very big, goal: eventually surpass the very strongest character. For the reader, having a strong character present from the very beginning provides a tangible and realistic sense of growth, which makes the story as well as the characters feel that much more real. I believe the second reason for introducing an OP character early on in the story is how they can serve as a really effective bodyguard, a protective veil for your protagonist, so to speak. The mere existence of Gojo, and to a lesser extent Sukuna in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, enables the storyteller to showcase impressively strong and themselves almost overpowered enemies as early as episode 4 or 7 without any actual risk to the protagonists. This allows for the tension in the story to be temporarily turned up while not forcing Itadori, the main character, to be rushed through his development as a character. Both the unnamed cursed spirit as well as Jogo, this Squidward looking dude, are pretty good examples for this. Either of these monsters could absolutely dominate Itadori at his current power level. Jogo is ridiculously dangerous, evil and powerful, and we are even explicitly shown this fact during the fight with the cursed spirit. This means that, under regular circumstances, the story would either need to rush the main character's development with a sudden big power-up, or the story simply can't introduce such threats this early on, thereby being forced to have its main characters fight fodder for another season or so before they can naturally mature to be strong enough themselves. This isn't the case for Jujutsu Kaisen though, because Jujutsu Kaisen has a Satoru Gojo, and that is what makes it so special. Both of these fights are really fun to watch, in part because they are so impressively animated of course, but in part because the fights can only be this intense and exhilarating because the author has been able to introduce a handful of very strong foes much sooner than would normally be possible. For context, Episode 4 of Black Clover has the main characters fight some nameless beginner enemies with no stakes, the 7 Deadly Sins have Meliodas fight some extremely unimportant knights, and Naruto just gets inappropriately touched by Kakashi. This same argument can be made for My Hero Academia, albeit to a slightly lesser extent. All Might's presence in the story allows for the writers to ramp up the strength of the villains, and especially the Nomu, to levels that none of the protagonists could handle at the time, without forcing any of them to progress too quickly, thus skipping or rushing vital parts of their character development. The final and in my opinion greatest aspect of having OP characters in your story is that all of them, the All Mights, the Gojos, all of them will eventually fall. For whatever reason, be it old age, a disease, an enemy that even they could not beat, or some unexpected trickery by the bad guys, our beloved teacher will die or be otherwise removed from their role as the overpowered one, therefore finally giving center stage to our heroes. The protagonists then have their own chance to shine, to prove that they have become strong enough to succeed their mentor, maybe to show that they can finally overcome them. All Might, for example, was always bound to fail at some point. The series isn't even especially subtle about it. In the second episode, we already see him coughing up blood, and the show doesn't ever really stop making it very clear that this hero's time has come or will soon come. While this hasn't happened yet in Jujutsu Kaisen, it has been foreshadowed to a certain extent, and I am absolutely certain that something will eventually happen to Satoru Gojo, allowing and forcing Itadori and his friends to grow into the fully realized sorcerers they were always bound to be. This is, of course, a little upsetting. Just like the protagonists, we, the fans of a show, grow attached to these OP teacher characters. They provide a certain lightheartedness to many situations, and watching them has just been consistently cool throughout the show. But it's important to keep in mind that this moment, the disappearance of the overpowered character, is all but guaranteed to serve as a stepping stone for the real protagonists. Of course it isn't nice to see a fan favorite character leave the show in one way or another, but a setup like this can provide an absolutely massive emotional payoff. Naruto beating Pain, finally achieving the thing that Jiraiya simply couldn't, is one of the most resonant scenes of that entire show. Deku growing into the powers inherited to him on his path to become just as big a hero as All Might was in his prime is setting up a really impactful finale that wouldn't work quite as well if All Might hadn't laid the groundwork for it. In my opinion, this is the main function of these characters, the main reason for their appeal and use in a story. Sure, they look cool and they make for some really fun fights, but ultimately the show isn't about them. The show is about the Itadoris, the Dekus, the Narutos, and we are meant to identify with and root for those little guys, and if the show is actually decent, we do. So while losing this authority figure hurts, it is always going to feel so good to watch those little guys finally grow up to be just as amazing and skilled and overpowered as their teachers have shown them they could be. Before I end this video, I suppose I have to admit that there is one major flaw in having a monstrously powerful character accompany the main characters. It doesn't matter if it's Gojo, All Might, Naruto or anyone else. If you want any tension in the plot, but you don't yet want to remove your OP characters from the show permanently, there is always a need to come up with some reason why the protagonists even need to solve the problem at hand. Like, why doesn't Boruto just call his dad anytime any problem comes up? As an extension of that, anytime the plot calls for a certain amount of tension and danger, it also calls for an excuse for why the strong character can't be here right now. And if this happens too often, or the show goes on for too long without any reasonable plot development, these excuses can become a little silly or even annoying. I sincerely hope this won't be the case for Jujutsu Kaisen, but I guess only time will tell. So there you have it. My thoughts on why overpowered teacher characters are really good for an action story. I know of course that there are overpowered characters that fill more of a villainous role like Yujiro Hanma, Meruem or Aizen, and the points I laid out here don't really apply to them. Also, I am well aware that there is a notable exception. I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless. If there is a particularly powerful character you really like, please tell me about them in the comments. You'll find my twitter.com in the description, and if you're feeling my content, I upload on every other Wednesday, so you should stick around and subscribe for more of my hot anime takes.